Hello and welcome to episode number 320. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. Welcome back and thank you for joining me. At the end of 2015, the Project Management Institute is going to make changes to the way PMI certified project managers have to earn their professional development units, their PDUs. And in this episode, we are going to explore these changes with John Klein, who is PMI's Global Manager of Certification Products. So he is right at the heart of these changes. First of all, you are going to hear that many rules and criteria about PDUs are going to remain the same. And so most of what you already know about PDUs today will be true tomorrow. For example, you can still earn 30 free PMP PDUs by listening to this podcast, but then we are going to delve into the details of the PMI PDU changes by looking at the new PMI talent triangle and by going through the current PDU categories and learning what changes are ahead. But before we start, let me give you a disclaimer here. If you are not PMI certified and you never intend to become a certified PMP, GMP, PMI ACP, or any of the other PMI certifications, then please stop listening right here. This interview is of no interest to you at all. If, on the other hand, you are PMI certified, then consider this episode as being mandatory listening. You really need to know and understand this. And now, here's your change. Enjoy the interview.
Project Management Podcasts Feature Interview.
Today with John Klein, Global Manager of Certification Products with the Project Management Institute.
Hello, John, and welcome to the Project Management Podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
You are the Global Manager for Certification Products for PMI. What exactly do you do in that role?
That is correct. Well, as Global Manager for the Certification Products, I have 3 product managers who report into me. So really we manage the life cycle of PMI's certifications, the PMP, PFMP, and so forth. So we identify and assess the validity and feasibility of product opportunities. We make sure the right product is delivered at the right time. We work on developing strategy and the roadmap for development, and even to the point of evangelizing the product internally to both our executives as well as to evangelizing it outside the walls of PMI. So the main thing I always try to communicate to people is I'm trying to represent the customers through the product development process, and that's what my product managers do.
All right. And what we want to do right now is really right up your alley because we want to discuss the changes that are coming to the CCR program, the Continuing Certification Requirements program, at the end of this year. And to get us started, what I've done is I've selected a few questions that can easily be answered with yes and no to show people that, it really not that much is changing here. So let's get straight into these questions here.
Excellent.
So first one, will I, as a certified PMP, still have to earn 60 PDUs?
Yes, and I would also like to add that if you're certified PGMP, PFMP, or PBA, you will still need to earn 60.
Right, and then the RMP, the ACP, and the SM, the scheduling, right, they have to earn 30.
Correct, exactly.
No change there. Okay. And the recertification cycle, that it will still be 3 years?
Yes.
Okay. And there are still 6 categories under which these PDUs can be earned?
Yes, those 6 activities to earn PDUs will remain true, but probably in the new CCR refresh, you won't see them referenced as categories.
Okay, so it's just a different name. Instead of categories, we're going to call them something different.
Right, they're an activity.
Okay. And is each hour of a qualifying activity still going to be worth 1 PDU?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And can I still mix and match from these 6 activities, as we're going to call them, in order to earn my PDUs in the future?
Yes, you can, as long as you're within the requirements, which is true now and will be true.
Right, minimums and maximums and all that.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. And do PDUs still have to be entered into the online CCR system the way we do it today?
Yes, that still will be the process.
Okay, and will that system still show me where I lack PDUs and have to earn more?
Yes, and I will add that not only with the CCR changing content-wise with the talent triangle, there are enhancements that are being made to that system as well to hopefully improve the user's experience as you go through that.
Okay. And the final question that I have for you is very much my own question here, because up to today, listeners of the Project Management Podcast, they could claim 30 Category C PDUs, that's the PMPs, they could earn 30 Category C PDUs for listening to this free podcast. Will that still be possible in the future as a self-study activity?
Yes, as long as you continue with the great work you've been doing in aligning your topics with our areas of certification, and you continue to disseminate knowledge, that will remain true.
Perfect. So in other words, all these questions, we've just answered them with yes. One was with a yes but there, with the categories, they're going to be renamed. It seems that much of what we know about the CCR is therefore not changing. But one area that is changing, and you've already mentioned that, is the talent triangle. So what exactly is the talent triangle?
The talent triangle, and I'm going to flip this on you just a little bit, and this is kind of my take on it. I don't really look at it as what is the talent triangle. It's more the question is who is the talent triangle. And
okay.
You as a PMP, again, as I told you earlier, we try to look at this through the customer's eyes. So I look at this talent triangle as being representative of you and your listeners. So if you go back 30 years since the PMP was launched, I think you would agree with me that both business and projects have grown more complex and global, and that an effective PM over that time or a subset of that time to stay current, they continually develop themselves along with the environment, correct?
Absolutely, yes. I always liken this to doctors and pilots. I would not want to fly in an aircraft with a pilot who's studied in 1972 and learned how to fly then and hasn't improved since then.
Exactly, and it's funny. I use some of those same examples, but both in engineering, pilots, doctors, and that. And after all, that's why the CCR program was established, was because our practitioners and organizations realized that the profession is dynamic, and so that we needed to continue to evolve. So when you look back, you go back, and I know you're going the talent triangle. Well, we're familiar, as project managers, we're familiar with the triangle that shows time, scope, and budget. A lot of people, and please know I'm being very simple here, but that triangle really kind of demonstrated what project managers do. And that was they manage through the time, the schedule, and the budget. And that hasn't changed. Those areas are still incredibly important and critical to organizations, and project managers need those technical skills to manage through those areas. But just like we've, since 1984, when the PMP was established, things have evolved. So has the profession, and so has the organization. And it's to the credit of the practitioners that it continues to evolve. And so what we did was, with research with practitioners and organizations, they still recognize those technical skills are important. But in the complex and competitive global marketplaces of today, additional skills were identified and needed by our practitioners, and things they should develop in, such as leadership and strategic and business intelligence as well. And the organizations and practitioners came back and said these additional areas support longer range objectives, and they contribute to the bottom line. So what we've done is we haven't, as you said, changed much. We've added, we've grown, and we're saying the technical skills are still very much important. but also is the leadership as well as the business and strategic. And the triangle now has also become who the individual is, what makes up that individual, and not just what they focus on and do.
All right. So the talent triangle has been added as an additional requirement to the CCR. As the name says, triangle, it has three sides, and they are technical project management, strategic and business management, and leadership aspects. Let's take a look at these three sides. Can you give us some examples, maybe? What do we mean by technical project management?
Okay, so if we're looking at that as a technical project management PDU, the definition would simply be the knowledge and skills and behaviors related to improving one's ability to function more effectively within the domains. And by the domains, this is where I encourage people. You could actually go into an exam content outline that was built by practitioners through role delineation studies. And if you look in the domains of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing the project, you see task and knowledge and skills that have been identified through research of practitioners. And those, when you better yourself to function better within one of those, that's what we're kind of considering the technical PDU.
Right. And that would also include if I go to a course and I learn about new methodologies, or if our company is introducing a new software, project management software, that would all be considered more on the technical project management know-how.
Exactly.
Okay. The second side of this triangle, strategic and business management. What do we find here?
Well, what you find here, and this has, again, been something we've heard from the practitioners and from the organizations, and it's the knowledge and expertise in the industry or organization that you're in that enhances the performance and delivers better business outcomes. Now, that may seem kind of vague, but what it's saying is, don't be heads down in the project. Are there other areas? Do you understand how the members from finance, what are their competing priorities, how they deliver things? Are you incorporating that into the project? Do you understand, if you're in pharma and you're a project manager, maybe the FDA regulatory requirements, as well as just what your organization has determined? And that way you can look at the objectives and the goals and strategy of your organization and make sure the project is in alignment with them. And also through your project, you may discover things that could help with the goals and the strategies of the organization.
Okay. Would governance also fall under the strategic and business management area?
Yes.
Okay. And the last side of the triangle, that is the leadership aspect. I think everybody has an understanding of leadership, or at least some idea. How does PMI define leadership? What's part of this side?
This would be, and this is currently, if you look within a number of the exam content outlines, you see leadership qualities throughout it. And what this is the knowledge, skills, and behaviors specific to understanding, motivating, and guiding cross-functional teams or individuals across all domains. So what are you doing to better lead the team from beginning, from initiation to closing?
All right, so that's the content of the talent triangle: technical project management, strategic and business management, and also leadership aspects. The big question, of course, is how exactly is this talent triangle now going to impact the CCR?
Well, it's going to provide simply directed guidance, and it's going to allow for flexibility. And I'm happy to elaborate. What we've done is the research prior to this, we had 80% of practitioners say they wish PMI provided guidance towards the needs of employers when we researched it and looked at focus groups. But what is really important is that they said they wanted flexibility. So tell us where we need to be doing, but allow us the flexibility to know what's right for me and myself and my career. And that's exactly what we've done. So what we're going to do within that is we're providing practitioners, we're saying, continue your development, you're committed, you're working hard to maintain the profession, But look in these areas because we have great knowledge that tells us the employers and those people who rely on what you do need you to be developing technically, developing your leadership, and developing your strategic and business management. So it's simply guiding a directed learning in those areas, but you, Cornelius, will tell me whether you learn something technical or leadership or strategic in business. I'm not going to come in and say you have to take this course and you have to do this. You still have the flexibility to say, hey, I like that, but I'm going to be able to then determine what technical skills and areas to focus in and so forth.
Right. However, the guidance that PMI is giving is you say you must have training or earn PDUs that focus on technical project management. You must earn PDUs under strategic and business management, and you must earn PDUs that are on the leadership side of the triangle, right?
Right. And with all of that, within education, there's going to be a requirement of out of the 60 PDUs, about 60% of them are going to be required in the education in those three areas of the triangle. Each area of the triangle, and this is maintaining the discussion on those that have 60 PDUs, is each area you'll have to earn a minimum of 8 PDUs for a total of 24. But then that allows you the flexibility of saying, I need to focus a little more on technical, I need to focus a little more on leadership, or I want to focus a little more on strategic and business.
Okay, so let's take this conceptual change that we have and turn it into an example from me here. So I'm a certified PMP and I have to earn 60 PDUs. And let's see how I can earn these PDUs in the future via those 6, they're no longer called categories, they're then called 6 activities, right?
Right.
Okay. And will they still be numbered A, B, C, D, E, F? Will that be the same?
In the usability, probably not. No.
Probably not. Okay, let's stick with A, B, C, D, E, F for now, and we'll see however it changes in the future later on. Right. So first of all, today under D, E, and F, when I take them together, there's a maximum, and there's going to be a new maximum of 25 PDUs in those 3, right?
Right.
Okay, and the only other change in D, E, and E, and F is that today, I believe under F, I can earn 10, and the new maximum is going to be 8.
Right. Actually, it used to be under working F, you could earn 15.
15. Okay.
And that's been reduced to 8 for working as a professional.
All right. So that's for the D, E, and F. And then for the A, B, and C, this is where the change really impacts us, because this is where we must earn at least 8 PDUs on each side of the talent triangle, right?
Correct.
Okay. And under category C, as far as I can see it, there is no change to A, B, and C. It's just you can still earn them the way you want, but 8 have to be on each side of the triangle.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So, again, question about the podcast listeners here. They're going to be listening to this podcast. They get free PDUs under category C. And I assume as they're putting these free PDUs, category C, into the system, they're going to have to somehow tell you, oh, this was 8 PDUs for leadership. I have 15 PDUs for the technical side. Somehow this information has to come across, right?
Right.
So it's going to be up to me to make sure that our listeners know which episode of the podcast falls into which side of the triangle.
It could, and this is a good discussion point here, because, again, I don't want to come across and feel like we're dictating, like, well, this is what that is, because honestly, some people can listen to something and pick up something that would make them better technically. And someone maybe in your podcast, while you're also talking those technical skills, someone comes across and goes, I really like the way Cornelius said that. If I communicated that way, I could probably, explain this better to my project team. Well, that's leadership. And then taking it so that forth. So this is where I was talking about the flexibility. To some extent, yes, in some things there's going to have to be the flexibility to where we allow the person being educated to determine what they were educated on. Now, in some cases, when people, in a lot of cases, when you're developing official courses and you're doing stuff like that, it would be beneficial to the practitioners if it was laid out, or if you really feel this is a heavy technical discussion, that you do label it for them. But when it goes through, there will be times if you didn't brand it, it would be up to the user to determine, where it was. Now, remember, they can get audited, and then we would ask them, okay, how did this pod, you put it down technically, could you please give us a brief explanation on what technically...
Why you thought it was technical. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, we provide a log file to our listeners that they can print out. And every time they listen to an episode, they can mark down, this was 45 minutes long and it was about this topic and I listened to it on this date, so that they have something to show to PMI and prove, hey, look, this is my log file that shows when I have listened to these episodes. And that's probably going to be needing some updates so they can put the talent triangle in there and say, this is which side of the talent triangle this falls under. So again, very little change, actually. I think what I'm seeing is there has been a change in category F, only 8 instead of 15. And then we need to have a minimum of these 8 PDUs on each side of the talent triangle. It seems very straightforward.
It is. And I think you'll see not only much has changed, but we've added the ability to expand what people are needing and doing and becoming and being efficient project managers to count those towards their renewal on it. So I think the change, sometimes people look at change as being restrictive or somehow it's going to hinder them. And I think this actually opens it up and provides them, as well as individuals such as yourself, more opportunity.
Mm-hmm. All right. Of course, whenever there is change to a system, there will also be critical voices. Personally, I think this change makes sense. Like I said, I don't want to fly with a pilot that, started flying in 1972. Same with the project manager. I'd like them to be up to date. But still, there will be critical voices. There are critical voices, and we want to address those as well. And I have 3 statements from you that I have actually been told, hey, look, this is my view, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. The first one comes from a chapter president. What I heard is they said, as a chapter president, this change shows that PMI no longer values its volunteers because the number of PDUs that can be earned by a volunteer have been drastically reduced. And it means that volunteer work has become less important, and it's now harder for the presidents and chapter leadership to find willing volunteers for the chapter because, I cannot just give them PDUs for their work.
Right. And first, let me clarify as we go into this, since we're going to talk about this, is that has been an exception to the responses that we've heard, just like what you said a few seconds ago of understanding and realizing what this means and why it's beneficial is the majority of what we hear. So, but as with any change or whatever, those who are implementing the change need to be able to address any questions or whatever that comes up. So I did want to let you know that is not a common response we hear, and that the majority of the feedback has been positive. Also, I want to make it clear that any change we do is never meant to negatively impact an individual or a group. Whenever at PMI we institute a change, it is always to either maintain or enhance the quality and relevance of our certification for all of our certification holders globally. And that is why this change is taking place. So by no means did we want to cause distress to anybody, but realizing with change, there needs to be adaptation. So let's look at the first part where it says maybe that PMI does not value volunteering and contributing to the profession. I can tell you just my short tenure here at PMI, I've been nothing short of impressed at the volunteers and individuals such as yourself who are dedicated to the profession. And I can tell you through every level of this building, people understand and appreciate that. So if you look at us wanting to be one of the top, and we are the top certification in project management, but even wanting to go higher to where people really sit us at the table with some of the other professions. If you look at their certifications or their professional designations or their licensures, like you said, the pilot and the doctor and the engineer and people like that, not many of those top certifications even recognize volunteering as developmental. They don't even have it as part of their developmental process. And then the ones that do, because some do it, may be limited to as little as 10% of what can be counted towards your renewal. So even through this process, and I can tell you while I was working on it, a number of individuals were making sure that we were staying on top of, and we're going to stay, show our volunteers that they are still valued. And that's demonstrated that 40% of total PDUs that are needed for renewal can be in giving back to volunteering. And if you take this next point I'm going to tell you, you can even see that of all the PDUs that are submitted, 80% of those PDUs are submitted in education, meaning only 20% now are coming in as giving back. So when we established the CCR refresh, we only said that 60% of PDUs would be required to renew, which is below the 80% that's coming in. So this leaves an opportunity for chapters and others to make people aware that they can get 40% of their PDUs in volunteering or giving back to the profession and still renew their certification. So there's an opportunity there. And then also, just as your podcast is, volunteering can be educational. So if an individual, through volunteering, since we're using chapter as an example, is volunteering or working with a chapter, could gain access to educational opportunities or actually, in being somehow involved, enhance their knowledge in alignment with how we define the PDUs, they could submit that as an educational PDU as well. So what we've got to be careful of, and we've got to look to protect the quality and relevance of our certifications, is that the PDU does not become a currency to get something done by someone, but that the PDU is representative of what someone has done to continue to develop within the profession.
All right, and that pretty much takes me straight to the second critical voice that I have, and that comes from the certified project managers themselves, because that was the voice that I heard. It said, as a certified project manager, the change means more work for me because until now, the CCRS provided a great work-life balance, and I was able to earn PDUs based on my own needs. And this whole talent triangle now is just a nuisance. That's the way that he framed it, because it adds an additional requirement on top of this. I can't just say, I want to earn PDUs here, here, and here. Now I must earn them based on what PMI is saying. And what is your response to that?
Well, first of all, it's still 60 PDUs. And as we talked about earlier, one PDU equals 1 hour. So there's 60 hours in the old, and there'll be 60 hours in the new. But I understand they're saying, well, you're directing me toward this. And if you look at when you and your listeners, you got your PMP, there was a standard, an expectation of knowledge or whatever. And when you demonstrated that, you were awarded the PMP, and that's what provides its value. Other practitioners created it, and they said, this is what you need to accomplish to be bestowed the PMP. Now, as we grew, we got a little bit away from that. And so what we're coming back, we're saying, look, we need you to continue to develop, but it needs to be in these 3 areas: technical, leadership, strategic, and business. But again, to their point of what that individual says, where he goes, PDUs based on my own needs, we go, based on your own needs, do some development in those 3 broad areas. And you can continue forward. So I think early on people thought it was going to be restrictive. And I think as they see and we talk and they learn more about it, they're going to see that they have a lot of flexibility within these 3 areas of the triangle as it relates to them and their circumstances.
Exactly. And I think that much of our discussion previously really showed that there is a lot of flexibility. One question, just interjecting here before we get to the third and final critical voice. Do the areas of the talent triangle overlap? So can a training be simultaneously be considered leadership and also part of, say, the strategic and business management?
Yeah, that is where we're looking. I would say, without going into the content, I wouldn't say it's not possible. Now, I don't know if you're talking where some people will say, hey, we may do a hour program and 0.5 is leadership, 0.5 of it is technical, or it's a combination. What we would look at right now to that individual and to that organization, if they say, well, the majority of it is technical, but we hit on leadership principles or whatever in it, we may come back and say, well, it's what that is primarily driving towards.
Right. But
I do want to interject here. Here's the beauty, too. We're going to be learning about this and what we're doing at the same time. And the CCR program is going to be dynamic. So I want people to know that it's going to evolve, and we're going to get better, all of us, at it, at identifying and classifying and doing the stuff. But right now, I would say on that one, it's primarily what the benefit was that would drive the designation.
Okay. And the third and final critical voice that I have for you, that came from a registered education provider, a training provider that's registered with PMI. And she said, as a registered education provider, I welcome this change because it offers additional opportunities for my training program. However, she also noticed that PMI has massively ramped up their own online webinars in the past years. And this means PMI is really only making this change so that they can sell their own online webinars to members instead of letting registered education providers handle the training.
Yeah, I can understand that coming in. I mean, we've got to understand that PMI is a professional association. And one of the things that our CEO, Mark Langley, has stated that one of our core values is that we need to be a source and a resource for all our stakeholders. And I can tell you, who I have been involved with the CCR, there has been no interaction between us or planning that this would happen. I think what you're seeing in the ramp up, and I can honestly tell you I don't even know what that would mean, ramp up, how much that is or what percentage increase is. That's a response to what the stakeholders need and the profession is dictating and what we're trying to provide, as well as the great work the REPs are trying to provide in the chapters. So I would really hope anyone understands that this by no means was a gimmick to try to increase a revenue channel or to do anything of that sort. It's really, again, to make sure our certification holders are looked to as the gold standard, and then PMI also tries to be a source and a resource to all stakeholders who are looking to learn and become involved within the profession.
Excellent. Thank you for addressing the somewhat critical voices here. And like you said in the beginning, these are really in the minority. The questions that I personally got, they were more clarifying questions. How exactly does it work? When is this going to happen? How is this going to be impacting me? The critical voices, yes, they were in really the minority here. Now, the interesting thing, if I understand this correctly, really is that it isn't going to take full effect until 2017. Can you please walk us through the timeline of this change?
I'm happy to, and actually the full effect is more around 2018, December 2017 forward is when the major effect will come through. And the reason that this timeline was established and it was always accepted and encouraged as we developed this was we've got to understand what the individuals are going to have to go through or the stakeholders are going to go through with this change. So if you look at 2015, we've dedicated almost all of 2015 to saying this is what's happening, this is what it's going to look like, what are your questions, how can we help you understand? And then it's going to evolve later into the summer for REPs and chapters on what they need to do to, get their programs and resources ready to be in alignment with that. So really, 2015 has been the year of awareness and education around this program. And then when you go into after December 15, you're going to see that we're going to require everyone submit their PDUs into the format. So the talent triangle, the PMI talent triangle is up and running. And if you're submitting a PDU after December 1st, 2015, and it's in education, you're going to have to submit it in one of the areas of the triangle. And of course, just as we're here, we're going to be there to help you and try to do everything to make sure people understand what they're doing. And we're going to try to make the process more intuitive for you as you go through that. Now, here's, again, is what we did in thinking of our customers in mind. Even though you're having to submit your PDUs within the new format, if your credential was to expire between December 2015 and December 2017, you don't have to meet the requirements. So you could still have, you may not have any leadership PDUs. You may have, more, you may only have 25 educational and you have 35 giving back. That's fine. We're gradually moving into this. You're understanding it. But once you start your new cycle in those dates, or your cycle ends in 2018, then you are going to be held to the requirements. We're going to say you need, 24 PDUs within the triangle, 8 for each side, and then 11 electives, and then the rest of them, you could even go up to all your 60 PDUs or whatever, and then in giving back, you can't have more than 25 if it's a 60 PDU certification in it. And that's really kind of where we're at. It's very simplistic. It's allotted a lot of time for the discussion and the awareness and for us to adapt to the needs of what you all do. And then for our practitioners and other stakeholders to slowly get into the new format and adjust. So was that good enough for you, or did I miss anything?
No, I think that is absolutely good enough for me. My final question for you is really this. I mean, we've covered everything here except maybe discuss what needs to happen right now. What are your recommendations for the certification holders out there, for our listeners? Is there anything that they need to do in order to prepare for this change? When I get asked this at a lot of the interactions, and I usually have about 6 things, I go, first, understand, learn what is changing. Understand the change. And I say this because that could be a great opportunity for people. This is a selling point about individuals' credentials or credentials during that. Look at what we as PMPs or other certification holders do in commitment and development towards the business needs. 3, know when your certification expires. You heard what I was saying before of whether you need to meet requirements or not. 4 would be submit your PDUs. If you've earned PDUs, submit them prior to December 15th. If you don't, we'll have a process to handle it. But we know the majority of practitioners wait till about their 3rd year to begin submitting the majority of their PDUs. So why not get ahead of the game a little bit and begin to think about how you could develop within the triangle, the PMI talent triangle, or how you can adapt your group or activities to the PMI talent triangle. And then finally is just to relax. We will all work together to make sure it's a smooth transition for everybody. And if we hit a bump, just realize we're all working together to just get over that bump. No one's going to be trying to push anyone backwards or hold them back. So if we do hit it, we'll get through it. Excellent. John, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Cornelius. Anytime.
And that was our interview with John Klein about changes that are coming to the CCRS. And based on what we have learned, please don't forget the most important thing that will stay the same. If you have a PMI credential like PMP, ACP, PGMP, and so on, then you can continue to earn 30 PDUs for listening to this show here, the Project Management Podcast, even after these changes, please go to pm-podcast.com/PDU for the details. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com. And when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. If you have never recommended cancelling a project, then you haven't been an effective project manager. Until next time.